What's up, gang? This is Brian with Flint Hill Catfishing. Welcome back to another episode. I'm going to be showing you and walking through my trolling motor install on my Ascend 128T. So stick around and we'll go through it. All right, so the trolling motor install I'm going to show you today, it can be done on any kayak. Many kayaks come prepped and ready, like turnkey for trolling motors. This one does not. A lot of the more, cheaper kayaks, this one's around $800. You get a $2,500, whatever, nice kayak, and it's gonna have that stuff in it probably. But this one does not, and I had to do a few amendments to it to make it work right. So anyway, here's what I got going on. The trolling motor that I purchased is a Minn Kota Endura C2. It's 30 pounds thrust. Got a 30 amp draw, maximum draw, amperage wise, and it already had the transom mount here. So what we did, let me put this down real quick. What I did, I had a friend help me. Just got some tools and some metalworking gear. Dean Lawson, he's been in some of my videos. Anyway, we mounted a plate on here. It's stainless steel, and it gave us an upright to mount this wood to, and I screwed this 2x4 to it. That allows me just to clamp this trolling motor right onto the back of it. And of course, you're gonna have to use silicone on both sides of these bolts, and with the nuts on the back. I use the locking aircraft nuts or fiber nuts, whatever you want to call them. I relocated my handle. I actually put one on each side because the handle used to be right here. You'll also notice that the drain plug, I relocated it to the side on the back right there. This drain plug used to be right about here, but I put a piece of plastic on the inside and screwed it or put adhesive on it to cover the hole from the inside of the kayak, and then I siliconed over it before I put this plate down. Everything you put in, you're going to want to silicone it with marine sealant really well. And these things, you can buy these drain plugs if you break one or if you want to install it somewhere else, or the other one gets broken when you take it out. But that one relocated well. I just took it out of there and put it there. So you'll have to relocate a few things, but it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, I wanted two handholds because it makes it a little easier when I'm trying to slide it up on my trailer. I can just kind of grab both handles and slide it forward. It just works for me. So what's going on is, in order to make this work, I had to take the actual tiller head off. All right, so if you're wondering if wiring it is complicated, it's really not. And I'll start with this. Everybody knows what this is, I'm sure. Just used a trolling motor. This is the tiller head that goes on top of the trolling motor shaft. And inside of this, there was a speed control that this operates. You turn this for 3 speeds of reverse and 5 speeds forward. The problem with the switch that's inside of here is that it shaves off power in the form of heat. It uses a shunt device in it, and when you're using a shunt, that's what it does. It shaves off the excess in the form of heat, which means you're wasting battery power. When you put in a pulse width modulator or PWN in place of this, you do away with this mechanism and you have a potentiometer, which is a small dial, and I'll show you that later what I put in. Small dial and a 3-way switch, on, reverse, forward, and then you have a dial that you can turn up to 100% or 0, and that'll decide or will determine how fast your prop is turning. It's much more efficient because it only draws the amperage per how far you turn that dial, if that makes sense. All right, so replacing the head on, or the tiller head rather, on that trolling motor, I'm using this guy right here. Now I put it in this box, but that is a pulse width modulator. What you got going on in here is a positive and a negative that are going to the motor, and a positive and a negative that are going to the battery. And then your control wiring is right here, which comes up to the switch. The center position's off. You have a reverse and a forward here, and that's all those are. I put it inside of this waterproof little, like, wannabe Pelican box from Academy or something. It works, and I just kind of put my own controls in there so I could tell what I was doing. I have some bungees where it straps in right here, and it's right by my side when I'm driving. I can just sit here and I can turn this guy, and I can bring it up however fast I want, or slow it down if I'm dragging baits to, you know, just barely a crawl. And I'll show you the operation on that in a bit when we get through the other pieces here. All right, so you got no steering when you take that tiller head off, right? Well, let me show you what I did. And this isn't my idea original. I got this off of YouTube from watching several different videos, and I kind of made it like I wanted to make it and what I felt worked good. So check it out. All right, so when you take this tiller head off, there's going to be 4 wires coming out of there. You only want the black and the red. That's your positive and your negative. On the top here, I just took a 1-inch 90-degree PVC connector, spray painted it black, and a 1-inch, this is an electrical, what they call a seal tight or liquid-tight connector. It's a 90-degree, it's plastic. I screwed it into there. And this is just a piece of weatherproof cable that I had laying around. And as long as it's like UF cable is what it needs to be rated, that's made for direct burial outside, and you just get a short piece. You probably talk to somebody in construction, they can get it for you if you didn't want to go buy some. So what I had to do with this was I just used the black and the red inside of this. This doesn't even have a ground. So 2 wires. For steering, I put a piece of all thread. This collar here determines how far down this guy will go. So I'm going to lower it a little here. All right, she lives right there. You can see what's going on there. It's just below my keel. And that's plenty. If you're just below the keel, I mean, most people say that works good. I'm not a pro, but it seems to work pretty good for me. And then I lock this collar set screw down enough where I can still turn it without having to struggle. I took a piece of all thread. This used to have one of these guys in it. I took that out and ran a piece of 1/4-inch all thread to here, about midway to these rod couplings. Then I put this nut on the back of it, a rod coupling, then another nut with a threaded 1/4-inch eyelet. And I just locked it until I got the angle that I needed these to turn, where I liked the way that they hung with the carabiners. That allows me to pull from my foot pedals with these cords on here and steer my trolling motor. So with the carabiners on, I haven't really got this, you know, exactly like I want it yet, but I kind of just tied a knot on each one of them that isn't going to go anywhere. From there, I come down and I have a Harken pulley right here. If you can see that. It's the same kind of pulley you would use on an anchor trolley. That gives me the angle I wanted coming down, and it pulls right through that exactly like I wanted it to. It's a nice angle, and it makes for smoother pulling when it's riding on that pulley. So if you follow from this green carabiner clipped on this eyelet, goes down through the pulley, comes all the way up front, and I basically tied it onto my foot pedal. And I did the same on this side. The other cable's tied onto my foot pedal. When I push on one foot pedal, it turns. Push on the other foot pedal, turns the other direction. So my foot pedals end up being my steering. So a quick recap on everything we just talked about. Everything you get ready to do on each step that I just told you about there, and every step I'm going to tell you from here on out, could be slightly different depending on your kayak layout. So make sure you dry fit everything first. I get the clear Gorilla tape. It's double-sided tape, and it's like a gel sticky tape, and it's double-sided, and you can put it on anything that you'd need to attach to your kayak to keep you from having to drill holes in your kayak before you're sure of placement. So I use that for everything, and I'll stick it on there for a dry fit, see if the angle's right with whatever I'm doing, or a rod holder or whatever. I'll use that sticky back tape to see if I like where it's at before I actually put a hole in my kayak to secure something to it. So just a little tip to keep you from messing your kayak up, because that's not fun. I had to make a significant modification to the center hatch by raising it to make more room for the battery because it just wasn't tall enough to have the battery sit upright in there. Some batteries you can lay down on their side, some you can't. Mine you can't do that with, so I had to keep it upright or it would leak fluid, and that's not a good thing. So let me walk you through that real quick. All right, so what I had to do, this hatch here used to look exactly like this one. As you can see, this has a factory lip on it, and that flange sits right on top of it. The black flange sits right on top of that raised flange. When you come up front here, you'll see I've added this white piece of material. It isn't beautiful, but honestly, I didn't really care. It's like a piece of cutting board, thick piece of nylon. And I just took this flange, this plate off, the hatch off, and I siliconed this white piece down. I cut it out the size I needed, and I cut a hole out of the middle of that cutting board, siliconed it down, screwed it down, did all the stuff that needed to happen to get that in place. That helped me raise this. So there are options if you don't want to put your battery on the outside. I just didn't want anything else on the deck of my kayak. You know, I mean, as you guys know, in any boat, you just run out of space quick. And if I can keep it inside, it's fine. And it seems to ride well in this 13-foot kayak. It rides perfect there. 43-pound battery. My big butt there, and then trolling motor off the back. It seems to balance really well, looks good in the water, and it's moving just like I want it to. So I'm happy with that, and it doesn't leak. That's good. Check out this drawing on the whiteboard. I'm going to walk you through it real quick, and I think this might help you some when you go to actually wire the kayak. So you have a motor, PWM, and the battery. You also have a positive and a negative wire from the PWM to the motor and from the PWM to the battery. And you also have terminals 1, 2, and 3, which are your switch for reverse, forward, and off. You also need a marine grade 30 amp inline fuse on the positive wire between the battery and the PWM. All right, so one thing not to forget if you're going to put a trolling motor on a kayak, you don't have to register the trolling motor or any motor if it's below 5 horsepower, if I remember correctly. But with a trolling motor, you do have to register your kayak. So you need to go through DNR in whatever state you're in and make sure you know what they're requiring. It's not that much money, really. It's just a formality you have to go through so they can trace your boat if it's stolen, or make sure you haven't stolen somebody else's stuff. So anyway, that's something you're going to have to do to be legal with this. I'm still waiting on my numbers to come in, but I have the temporary numbers already. You can print them off and you can use that until your real numbers come in. So just something to think about. Got to get that done. So I'm going to tell you, hands down, I was a little sketch about putting this trolling motor on here because it was kind of an investment between the battery, the trolling motor, and just, you know, all the work I had to do to it. It was a lot of work, but I want to tell you, for me personally, it was a great investment. I'm super happy with it. When I'm going upstream to fish places that are pretty hard to get to when I'm sticking it with a paddle, you know, I'm not out of breath. I'm not dying. I mean, I'm like old man paddling when I'm trying to go upstream for, you know, a quarter of a mile, and I'm having to huff it with the paddle. So it just makes it so much easier getting to places that are hard to get to. The other thing, as many of you know that fish in boats with trolling motors, like when you have to stop and fish and stay in one location, man, you can slow that thing down when you're in current and almost sit still, and then you can fish that bank, get bait fish if you need, throw a cast net, whatever, if your kayak's stable enough to do that. But it is super helpful, just being able to fish for bait and different things like that along the way, and just helps you get where you need to be and not have to try to do all of that stuff fishing with a paddle in your hand. You start to run out of hands, man. So I love it for that reason. The other reason I love it is, like, on the lake or even on the river, I can drag baits. And, you know, just you name it, the way you would want to fish, the trolling motor can help you do that a ton. And those of you that's fished with trolling motors for years, you know this. I haven't. All I know is I thoroughly enjoy it. Highly recommend it. So it's a great investment in my opinion. All right, gang. Well, that's a wrap. I hope this video was helpful. I just wanted to put together some pieces that maybe if you were on the fence about getting a trolling motor, this might give you some of the incentive or the information that you needed to go ahead and go for it. In my opinion, it's very worth the investment of money and time to do the work installing it. So anyway, this is Brian, Flint Hill Catfishing, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.